Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something many of you have likely considered, maybe even dabbled in, but we're going to go several layers deeper. Advanced budgeting techniques. If you're already tracking your spending but feel like you could be doing more to optimize, save more effectively, or just generally have your money work harder for you, then this is for you.
Right.
We're looking at strategies for fine-tuning your finances and really taking control.
Exactly. To get a handle on these advanced methods, we've been looking closely at a podcast script from Money Moves Made Easy TV.
Oh, okay.
It featured Emma, the host, and Michael Carter, a financial expert and budgeting strategist.
Ah, Michael Carter.
Yeah. What's particularly valuable about this source is its practical, expert-led perspective on how to really level up your budgeting game.
Our mission today is straightforward.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack the key advanced budgeting techniques that Michael Carter outlined and figure out how you, our listener, can implement them to gain even greater command over your financial resources.
Yeah.
And, well, accelerate progress towards your goals.
Get those practical insights.
Exactly. We're aiming for those insights that you can actually put into practice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get started with a method called zero-based budgeting.
Okay. What's interesting about zero-based budgeting is the fundamental idea that every single dollar of income is given a specific purpose.
Every dollar.
Every dollar. Imagine it. By the end of the month, your income minus all your planned expenses equals zero.
Right.
Now, this isn't about spending every last cent. It's about making a conscious decision about where each dollar is allocated.
Okay.
Whether it's for your essential bills, building your savings, growing your investments, or maybe paying down debt.
So you're planning for it all.
You're planning for it all.
Yeah.
Beyond just allocating every dollar, this method forces you to confront your spending habits and make conscious choices. That can lead to greater awareness and control.
So instead of looking back at the end of the month and wondering, where did my money go?
Yeah, that feeling.
You're essentially creating a roadmap for it right from the start. How does someone actually begin to implement a zero-based budget? It sounds like it requires quite a bit of upfront work.
It does involve some initial effort, definitely. The crucial step is to create a detailed spending plan before the month begins.
Okay.
Start by listing all your anticipated income for the upcoming month. Then, and this is key, assign every single one of those dollars to a specific spending category.
Every single one.
You'll want to prioritize your non-negotiables. First things like your housing costs, groceries, utilities, the essentials.
Makes sense.
Following that, you'll allocate funds towards debt repayment and your savings objectives.
Right. So it's about proactively directing your funds rather than reactively managing what's left over, if anything.
Exactly.
The source mentioned some tools that can help with this, didn't it?
Yes. The script highlighted apps like Frollo and YNA, which stands for You Need a Budget.
YMB, yeah. Heard of that one.
These tools can be incredibly helpful in tracking your actual spending throughout the month and ensuring you're staying aligned with your initial plan. They can definitely simplify the process, make it feel less like a chore.
Less of a burden.
Yeah. What's also worth noting is that while the concept is straightforward, adapting it to variable income can be a challenge.
Oh, right, if you're a freelancer or something.
Exactly. If your income fluctuates, you might need to average out your earnings or maybe create a flexible buffer in your budget. It takes a bit more planning then.
That makes sense. It's about that initial intention and then using available resources to stay on course. Okay, building on this idea of structured spending, another widely adopted method is the 50-30-20 rule.
Ah, yes.
Most people have a basic understanding of it, but the source we looked at introduced a really interesting angle, kind of a twist.
Right. The traditional 50-30-20 guideline suggests allocating roughly 50% of your income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings or debt repayment.
The classic breakdown.
It's a useful framework for many people just to get a general sense of balance. However, if we connect this to the bigger picture, like your individual financial aspirations, we start to see why a rigid application might not always be the most effective strategy.
Exactly. So what's the adjustment?
Okay.
What takes this from a basic guideline to a more advanced technique?
The key is to view those percentages not as fixed limits, but as flexible targets.
Flexible targets.
Yeah, that you adjust based on your specific financial priorities. Instead of treating them as set in stone, you adapt them to align with what you're actively trying to achieve.
Could you give us a concrete example of how someone might modify those percentages? Like, what would that look like?
Certainly. Imagine someone whose primary goal is to save aggressively for a down payment on a home, maybe in the next few years.
Okay, big goal.
Right. In that scenario, they might decide to allocate, say, 40% of their income directly to savings,
Oh, good.
and then consciously reduce their discretionary spending, their wants category, to perhaps 20% or even less. The remaining 40% would still cover their essential needs.
So you're shifting the balance significantly.
You are. Think about your long-term vision, too. If early retirement is a priority, your savings bucket might need to be significantly larger, maybe 50% or more, even if it means temporarily sacrificing some wants.
Right.
The crucial point is that the 50-30-20 rule becomes a dynamic tool. It molds itself to your ambitions rather than being just a restrictive set of boundaries.
I like that, a dynamic tool.
It also provides a degree of built-in flexibility if unexpected costs pop up in a particular month.
Like car repairs.
Exactly. You might have some leeway to shift funds between categories, provided you remain focused on your overarching goals. It's also worth noting that distinguishing between a need and a want isn't always clear-cut. That requires some thoughtful consideration.
That flexibility makes it so much more practical and relevant to individual circumstances.
Okay, now, for those listeners who find the idea of meticulously tracking every single expense a bit, shall we say, unappealing,
Many people feel that way.
the source also touched on something called the anti-budget. The name itself suggests, well, a different approach.
It does. The anti-budget is specifically designed for individuals who find traditional, detailed budgeting to be overly restrictive or, frankly, mentally taxing.
Yeah, it can be.
The central concept is to reverse the focus. Instead of concentrating on diligently tracking every outflow, you prioritize your savings right from the start.
Savings first.
Savings first. The beauty here is in its simplicity. By automating savings first, you remove the decision fatigue and build a consistent habit. It makes saving feel less like a chore and more like an automatic win.
Okay, so how does this work on a practical level? What are the steps?
The process is relatively straightforward. You begin by determining a savings rate that you feel comfortable with. The source suggested a range of 20 to 30% as a general guideline.
Okay. But this can absolutely be tailored to your specific financial situation and objectives. Could be more, could be less to start.
Right.
Once you've decided on that percentage, you set up automatic transfers from your main checking account to your savings, investment, or retirement accounts.
Automation is key.
Crucial. This happens immediately after you receive your income, like day one.
So it's about making sure your savings get taken care of before you even have a chance to spend the money. No temptation.
Precisely. And here's the key for those who aren't fans of budgeting. After those automatic savings transfers are completed, you essentially have the freedom to manage the remaining funds as you see fit.
Really? No tracking.
Well, minimal tracking, perhaps. Without the need for intricate categorization, the primary focus is on ensuring that you are consistently putting aside that predetermined portion of your income. It can make wealth accumulation feel almost effortless because it's automated. Now, one potential consideration with this method is that without actively monitoring spending at all, there's a risk of overspending on discretionary items. So some general awareness of your outgoings is still beneficial. You don't want to end up in debt accidentally.
Right, you still need some basic awareness, but I can definitely see the appeal of that for its simplicity and focus on the end goal. Okay, now let's discuss a technique that's been around for quite a while but has evolved with technology. The envelope system.
Ah, the envelopes.
I have vague memories of older relatives using actual physical envelopes for different spending categories.
That's right. The traditional envelope system involved physically dividing your cash into labeled envelopes, groceries, entertainment, clothing, you name it.
Very tangible.
Extremely. The fundamental rule was simple. Once the cash in a particular envelope was depleted, you stopped spending in that category for the remainder of the month.
Hard stop.
Hard stop. It's a very visual way to control spending. What's interesting is how this basic principle has been adapted for our increasingly digital financial lives.
Yeah, because who carries cash anymore, really? So how do you translate that concept of physical cash in envelopes to the digital realm?
The digital adaptation primarily involves using budgeting apps like Good Budget and Envelopes.
Okay, good budget and envelopes.
These apps essentially allow you to create virtual envelopes for your different spending categories. You allocate a specific amount of digital funds to each category at the start of the month.
Just like the physical ones.
Exactly. And then the app tracks your spending against those virtual envelopes. Another approach some people take, maybe a bit more DIY, is to establish multiple sub-accounts within their existing bank account.
Oh, like naming accounts, groceries, fun money.
Precisely. Dedicating each sub-account to a particular spending category and transferring the budgeted amount into each one.
So, the core idea remains the same, allocating a finite amount of funds to each area. But instead of physical currency, it's all managed electronically. What's the primary benefit of this digital envelope system?
The main advantage remains the same as the traditional method. It provides a clear visual representation of your spending limits for each category and helps you stick to those limits.
That visual feedback.
Yes. But the digital versions offer added convenience. You don't have to worry about carrying around specific amounts of cash or losing it.
True.
And the apps often provide helpful features like real-time tracking and reporting on your spending within each virtual envelope. It's a really effective way to maintain conscious spending habits without the potential drawbacks of relying solely on cash.
That makes perfect sense. It's that combination of visual budgeting and built-in spending controls that can be so effective. Okay, we've covered quite a range of techniques already. The final one we wanted to explore is the pay-yourself-first budget.
A classic.
The name is pretty self-explanatory, but what are the key elements to understand? It sounds simple.
While the name is straightforward, the pay-yourself-first method is really a cornerstone of effective wealth building. It's fundamental.
Okay.
The principle is exactly as it sounds. You prioritize your savings by automatically setting them aside before you pay your regular monthly expenses, not after.
So it's a deliberate shift away from the idea of saving whatever is left over at the end of the month, which, let's be honest.
Precisely, because often what's left over is, well, nothing, or much less than you hoped.
Yeah.
With the pay-yourself-first approach, as soon as your income arrives in your account, whether it's your salary, freelance earnings, whatever, you immediately and automatically transfer a predetermined percentage directly into your savings or investment accounts. Immediately. The source we looked at suggested a starting point of 10–20%, but this can certainly be higher if your financial situation allows. The percentage itself is less important than the act of doing it first.
And the automation aspect is absolutely critical here, isn't it? That seems to be a recurring theme.
Absolutely. Crucial. By automating those transfers, you eliminate the temptation to spend that money on other things first. You don't even see it, really.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. It essentially makes saving a non-negotiable first step in your monthly financial routine rather than an afterthought. Over time, this consistent automated saving can have a profound impact on building your long-term wealth and financial security. It's about making your future financial well-being a priority right from the outset.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into these advanced budgeting strategies. Just to quickly summarize what we've covered, we looked at zero-based budgeting,
Where every dollar gets a job.
the 50-30-20 rule, emphasizing the importance of adjusting it to align with your specific financial goals,
Making it flexible.
the anti-budget, which prioritizes savings and simplifies expense tracking,
For those who hate tracking.
the digital envelope system, bringing the traditional cash envelope method into the digital age,
Virtua envelopes.
and finally, the powerful pay-yourself-first method for automating your savings and wealth accumulation.
Making savings automatic. And what's particularly interesting, I think, is that these techniques aren't mutually exclusive.
Oh, that's a good point.
You could even consider blending elements from several of these methods to create a budgeting approach that perfectly suits your individual needs and preferences. Maybe combine pay yourself first with a simplified tracking system.
That's a really important point. It's not necessarily pick one. So for you, our listener, which of these strategies resonates most strongly with your current financial situation and your aspirations? Did any of these spark a new idea about how you could manage your money more effectively?
This leads to a crucial question. What actionable steps can you take to explore these further? We mentioned a few specific apps, Frollo, YNA, Good Budget, and Envelopes.
Right.
Taking just a few minutes to research one or two of those, maybe look at their website, see if their features align with your preferred budgeting style, that could be a very worthwhile next step.
Definitely something worth investigating, even just reading reviews. And here's a final thought for you to consider. Think about how implementing even just one of these advanced techniques could fundamentally reshape your relationship with your money and significantly accelerate your journey towards achieving your financial goals. What small, concrete change could you make today, or maybe this upcoming payday, that would have the biggest positive impact on your financial future?
It really is about taking that initial step, isn't it, towards a more intentional and ultimately empowered financial life.